Welcome to the 7 Laws of the Learner video series. We're currently in Law 5, the Law of Need. And now, here to tell you more about the Law of Need is our teacher, Dr. Bruce Wilkinson.
Welcome back to Human Fishing 101. We call it the Law of Need. That is, how do you help your students want to learn what you're going to teach them? Remember from the first half of this law that we are the ones who are responsible to put the bait on the hook. Christ talked about that kind of fishing, didn't he? Remember what he said? He said, we're the ones who are the fishers of men. For some reason, though, we think that when you become a Christian, you automatically know how to do that. That's ridiculous, isn't it? I can remember trout fishing in Colorado for the very first time. We were fortunate and had an expert fishing guide, and he said that these particular trout were very difficult to catch. He said they suck in the fly, they sense the hook, and immediately they spit it out. He said you got to catch that fish at that very split second or he was gone. Our guide asked us if we thought we could do that. Of course, I said. After all, I'd caught fish many times before. He said, okay, then. Cast over there underneath that tree and let your fly go downstream about 20 or 30 feet, and you'll probably get a couple strikes, a couple bites. A couple bites, I thought. So I did it, and sure enough, I started floating down the stream, and I was watching it real carefully, and all of a sudden, in about 5 seconds, he said, oh, you missed one right there. I said, you missed one? He said, yeah, pay attention. So I looked again. About another 5 seconds, he says, what? You missed another one. I couldn't believe it. I reeled in my line. I said, what on earth are you talking about? He said, well, you don't believe me, do you? I said, no, I don't believe that there were 2 strikes just then. He said, well, let me have your pole and I'll show you. So he did. He just walked right up to where I was, stood there, took my same line, went back in the same thing, and sure enough, same spot. Only this time, he caught one, a big one, just like that. A big one on his hook, a big old trout. In the exact same spot where I'd been standing for 20 minutes. I couldn't believe it. Friends, it took me until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before I finally began to get the feel of what he'd been telling me. Do you know what that man was? He was a master fisherman. And master fishermen, they know how to catch fish. And likewise, master teachers, they know how to catch their class. You see, in a sense, we all have the same class. And we all have the same content. The only difference is some of us know how to catch fish. Well, who was the greatest fisherman of all time? Wasn't it Jesus Christ? And if you want to teach the way Christ taught, you must learn how to build a need. Don't get frustrated with your fish. Don't sit in your boat and yell, bite that hook, you stupid fish! What's the matter with you? Pay attention, bite it! I've yet to find one single fish or person that likes to bite the bear hook. Don't beat them, bait them. And now we're going to present to you the 5 steps of how to build a need, how to bait them every time you teach. On the top left-hand box, write down the word teacher. On the right-hand box, let's write the word student. Student. And the yellow arrow represents the brass hook. The brass hook. If you give a group of Sunday school teachers a piece of paper and say, would you please write down on that piece of paper the top 10 needs of your Sunday school class in order of the biggest need and the most important one to the least one that class has. Then you're to give that same questionnaire out to the students in that class and then compile the results of that and take a look at what the teacher thought the needs were on this list and what the actual real needs were on this list. Guess how many of the top 10 the average teacher knows? The answer is 2.8. The average teacher knows less than 3 of the top 10 needs. Now let's put that in order, just so we don't miss the implications of that. If I am the teacher and I have my bow and arrow representing my lesson, and I have in my mind 10 things I'm trying to hit over here. This is a need, and this is a need, and this is a need, and this is a need, 10 of them. And then I come week after week and I'm saying to myself, hit it, hit it, got it, good, good. And then all of a sudden, the students come to me and say, wait a minute, you're shooting in your own archery range. Let me show you the real targets. They're over there.
and you haven't been hitting them. Do you know them? Could you write down and say, I know the needs, and when I open my mouth to teach, I'm meeting the needs. Step number 1, find the need. Find the need. You cannot meet the need unless you find the need. How do you do that? Well, I think I'd put in that box, ask. Now, how do you ask? Well, you do it simply like this. You say to James Woody here, you say, Jim, I'm trying to think about what kind of classes to give in our Sunday school class over the next few weeks. What are some of the major issues that couples, your age, not you guys, but most couples your age are dealing with right now? They'll tell you. Don't ever ask him. And he'll say, man, we've got a problem with our kids, problem with money. We've got too many problems. They'll tell you the... How else do you do it? You give an anonymous questionnaire. This works really good. You give out blank 3x5 cards, and you tell the people, please don't put your name on this, but answer the questions anonymously. And you ask questions like this. The biggest struggle I have at work is when my spouse and I have an argument and have a fight, it's usually over. When I get depressed, it usually follows. If I could change one thing in my life, it would be, I guess you could best characterize my spiritual life as, when I get ticked at God, it's because the sin that seems to always trip me up, no matter how hard I try, is, and my friends, people will tell you the answers. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Sunday school class. You take the next few hours and you go by yourself with those 3x5 cards, and you have some of the most valuable things you'll ever get your hands on. You take those away and you put them on a table, and you begin to set, this one's here, and this one's here, and this one's here, and this one here, oh, this one's here, and this one's here. And pretty soon you begin to formulate, here are the top 10 needs. Write those top 10 needs in the back of your Bible. And if you want an interesting challenge, take a look at the top 3 and then think back over the last year of what you've taught and see how many you've hit. That same man who was teaching Galatians asked me over lunch what he should do. I told him about the anonymous questionnaire. And he said, I can't do that Sunday morning. I said, well, you can if you want. If you care about your people enough to know, you can. He said, they'll never tell you. Yes, they will. Whatever you do, rip up the cards and throw them away when you're done. What should I do then? So the next time you preach, next Sunday, take a break in Galatians and preach God's answer to problem number 1. Call me up. Well, he gave out the questionnaire, and he called me up Sunday afternoon before he even preached the next week. He called me up. He said, Bruce, I did that thing with the questionnaire. I said, what happened? I cried all afternoon. You what? I cried all afternoon. Bruce, I had no idea what was really going on. I said, Pastor, did you look back over what you've been preaching on? He says, I haven't hit the top 3 in a year or more. I said, what are you going to do? So I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to take the first one, and next Sunday morning, next Sunday night, I'm preaching God's answer to that problem. I said, call me next week. He called me next Monday. What kind of report did he have? I said, Pastor, how'd it go? He said, Bruce, in all my years of ministry, I've never, ever had a response from my people like this. What do you mean? He said, on the way out, people that barely shook my hands were hugging me, thanking me. There's tears in my people's eyes. What were they saying, Pastor? They're saying, thanks, Pastor, that's exactly what I needed. I said, let me ask you a question. He said, what's that? You going back to Galatians? He said, not right away. Now, friends, find it and do it. What are you preaching on? Sunday. What are you teaching on? Sunday. Think about it. Let me ask you some real basic questions. What percentage of the couples in your church right now are having pretty good problems in their marriage? What percentage? 80%? How many would say 80% maybe? 50 to 60? Yeah, more than half, I guarantee you, are having significant size problems. Now, friends, that means half of our church is filled with marriages that aren't making it. So what are we doing? We're teaching about the Ezekiel temple. What percentage of the parents who have children are overwhelmed and don't know what to do to raise their children to have Christian values? What percentage? Yes. Why don't we talk about those things? Because we're busy teaching the next book. How else do you find the need? You go to a secular bookstore. I go one every other week at least. And you browse at what's coming out. And then you go to that lady behind the counter and you say, ma'am, what's the hottest selling books this month? She'll tell you. You know what it's about right now? Money, business, sex, and health. Those are the big four. When's the last time you've taught on money, business, sex, and health? Answer? We talk about religious things. Want a real shocker? Take Woman's Day or other well-known, well-used magazines and look at the question and answer section, which are really the questions everybody's asking, and next Sunday, preach God's answers to those questions. I guarantee you, nobody will move in your church. I have a friend of mine who has a real large church, and he began to notice that there was a recurring theme in his counseling about people saying, yeah, but I'm not quite sure if I married the right person. So he decided, I'm also preach the answer to what happens if you married the person you think was the wrong one. So he announced it. Next week I'm preaching an answer to what happens if you think you married the wrong person. This is true now, okay? You're going to doubt what I'm going to say. It's true. Next Sunday, in that week, it got out in the community. Next Sunday, now he has a big church. He had 2,000 visitors.
Goodness.
How do you know if you're a car dealer if you have a winner car that's meeting people's needs? Answer? You sell a lot. Why? People respond if their needs are being met. How do you know if you as a teacher are meeting their needs? If many buy your class. If attendance is going down, you're not scratching where they itch, my friend. If you're scratching where they itch, people will knock down the door to get in. Why? Everybody wants God's answer, and not many people are giving them. Find them. Make out your own list and start hitting the top ones. Number 2, you should do that once a year if you're teaching a class. Once a year. Number 2, after you find the need, focus on one need. Pick one. Just one.
It's your responsibility to not only know the needs, but also to prioritize them. You see, all needs are not created equal. Somehow we have this idea in our mind that all of the Bible is equally important to everyone. That is, it doesn't really make any difference if I teach you Ezekiel or 2 Corinthians. But my friends, it makes a very big difference. The Bible is equally inspired, but it is not equally relevant to everyone. It's our job as a teacher to focus on the need of our students that's most critical to them.